You ready?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I broke
And
it.
action.
Boom.
We out here, bro. We're
Like a
back, dude.
dope beat, dope beat dropping. Might
Dude,
break
speaking
dance.
of which, off topic, but I've actually contacted the guy who made our intro. He's gonna make us a custom one. Coming soon, season 3.
Season 3. And you spoil the people.
Sorry.
We're supposed to just
Sorry.
drop it. We're not
Do.
supposed to just tell them
All
what
right,
to
I'll
expect.
cut that out. I'll cut that out. I'll cut
Podcast is like a scary movie. You just jump
that
scare. Boom. Welcome to Paper Trail Podcast, where everything has a paper trail. So we follow that, and that's how we get our content. Today, what episode is this? Episode season 2, episode
Four.
3?
Four.
Episode 4.
Yeah.
I'm bad with numbers
It's
for
always
some
been a
reason.
while. It's been
Yeah, it's been a while. Today we have I say this every single week. We have a special guest, but I really mean we do have a special guest today. For those in the bug bounty community, you probably see a familiar face that is down for me. What is it for you, Grant? Is it up, down?
He's over here
It's
for me.
over. Okay, so he's
So
somewhere,
you're
I'm all
below
over
me
somewhere.
it.
and I'm over here. And then,
Okay, so he's somewhere for Grant. He's down for me.
I
Um,
try to mix it
the
up.
familiar face, Gavin. Gavin is Atomiczsec. If you have ever used HackerOne as a bug bounty platform, you might have seen his name. I know I've seen it pop up so many times. Um, Pretty sure I've gotten a dupe of one of his bugs. I would probably say so at this point. He's um he's gotten so many bugs. I think was it Department of Defense is where I saw it all over because I'm pretty sure I did a hunt on that before and saw your name all over at the DoD. Um, and we get to host him
Let's
and
go.
hear not only about him, not only hear his story, but Gavin has some inside stuff for the bug hunters out there, and some tips. We're gonna get to hear his process. I'm not gonna spoil you guys. I'm not gonna spoil you guys.
It's a gold mine.
Turn it over to you, Grant. You got any initial questions for our buddy?
Well, before we officially get started, I'm gonna dox you a little bit, Pap. Happy birthday, bro. Belated
Oh,
birthday. It was that boy's B-day.
appreciate
Happy
it.
Old
belated
man, old
birthday. Yes,
man.
sir.
Yeah, I am an old man. I am. But I'm young in spirit, so we'll take it.
And I swear, just like how Pap says we have a special guest every week, I say this is every time we have a full circle moment. This is really a full circle moment for me. A year ago, I saw Gavin's video on David Bombal, and it was my introduction. I joined his Discord. At the very end of that, he said, "I'm not Hollywood, come join." And that's just kind of been stuck in my head, I'm not Hollywood. So I joined, and that is where Coat found me and invited me to Pap's server. So it really is a full circle moment. Welcome, Gavin. Super honored to
Thank
have
you.
you on. I'm super excited.
Thank you.
So,
I'm super honored, I guess, to say like that I was able to make that connection. And I guess that's what this whole bug bounty community is about, really just getting people to help learn and network together. And it's crazy how much stuff can be accomplished just through that.
absolutely, networking is number one. So, Gavin, let's start off with who you are and how you got here, and tell us about you, man. This is your episode.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so I'm Gavin or Atomic ZSec, however you see me online. I like to consider myself a security researcher slash bug bounty hunter. Um, so my day to day, I'm just a college student for right now. I major in international security and cybersecurity and psychology as minors. Um, the reason putting cybersecurity as a minor is uh, the if I was to take it as a major, it would have been too much math, and I know I can't do math, so I steered clear of that. And this major gives me a more broad aspect on security as whole, which I'm interested in as well. But yeah, so other than that, I do some side projects with cyber threat intelligence, or my main thing, bug bounty hunting, which is what I like to focus on mostly.
So how do you, and I have so many college people that want to be a bug hunter after college. right? That implies that college is so busy, it's hard to become a bug hunter during college. So how did you do it? How do you do it? I know you started in high
Right.
school. How do you balance all of that?
Yeah. So I'd say my previous methods were not too efficient. I would prioritize my extracurriculars first. So I would be looking into the security stuff, bug bounty stuff before I would actually finish my homework. And then my homework, obviously would be pushed back, so I'd have to rush and do that. But now in college, obviously we have bigger assignments and they take longer. We have to meet with people, different things like that. So we have to I have to build my extracurricular schedule based off of my college schedule because if I don't do that, then like I won't get good grades and you know the rest from there. But yeah, so I kind of just build off of my current schedule, slip in things when I can. And the biggest thing here, I guess, with time management, obviously, is you want to be able to manage your time, but you also want to be motivated to do things to take up your time. Because I see a lot of, I mean, I do it myself as well, but just like laying around, scrolling on Instagram Reels, that stuff, it poisons your brain if you do it too long. So I deleted TikTok. I try to stay off of it, and I just try to focus on things that better you, and you learn over time to manage your time better.
Lock in. Lock
Yeah,
in.
Exactly,
you know,
exactly, exactly.
as a borderline boomer, it actually makes me smile to hear the youth, right? To hear uh, the next generation put down TikTok and focus on things that are they're really passionate about, and actually focus on that time management. That's awesome stuff. That's advice that I'm really happy that came out of your mouth and not like a boomer like myself. If
Right,
that makes sense.
right.
Incredible. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, for those who have not seen the David Bombal video, go watch that because this is now part two. But before
We should link that in the description.
we should, yes,
Free, uh, I guess, free traffic for David Bombal.
do shout
He's
out
an
to David
amazing
Bombal.
guy.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah,
Um, but before in that video, you kind of talked about how you got into bug bounty and stuff like that. But I want to know what happened before that. What were you doing before bug bounty and getting into cybersecurity and that kind of stuff?
yeah, yeah. So before I was really even like touching computers, I kind of was always like curious, or I just wanted to know how like systems work, basically. So this was way before I even knew how to like operate a computer or anything. Um, I was always like taking apart different toys or just looking at how different like smaller objects work, or even questioning things just about everyday life, like why does what does that big box at the traffic light do? Like just asking questions about every single thing. You like that's what kind of just drove me into the computer world and expanded from there.
What were your hobbies before? Were you like a skater kid, gamer kid? What did you do?
Yeah, so mostly before, wow, most of my hobbies are
Digging up
around
holes.
computers. Yeah.
Yeah. Introspective
Um,
learning.
yeah. So I played some sports. I want to say it was my main hobby, but that definitely took up a lot of my time. But I was also just really interested in like spies or like military. So I would I would be like building forts in the woods and just stuff
Nice.
like that. I guess whatever young kids do.
Yeah, okay. So you're in college now, man. So you did it. You graduated high school. And how's the college life treating you besides, all that busy stuff you're doing?
Yeah, so definitely keeping me busy. But it's a great mix, and definitely it's a great mix of like social life, but also academic life,
Mhm.
as well as just teaching you how to become an adult and getting yourself into your own routine and being independent. I'm really seeing kind of all of those aspects come into one now. So it's an enjoyable time.
Growing up. Growing?
Yeah,
Exactly.
it gets better.
I guess.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. It's you go to college, you're like, oh man, this is great. Like now I get to control my own life. And then 10 years later, you're like, this is great. I'm controlling my life. So it does.
Yeah,
I mean, in my opinion, it will get better as long as you're just sticking to it.
right.
Sir.
Yeah, I can't wait.
You ready to get into the meat and potatoes,
Yeah,
Paps?
oh, absolutely. So, I know what you guys are waiting for. What about the bug hunting?
Yeah,
What
this
about
guy
the
is famous for
the
that.
actual stuff, guys? This is Atomiczsec, and you're talking about his life. Um,
Ah,
we do care about your life, Gavin. Just to
of
throw out
course.
there. But I'd like to know, and I know in David Bombal's video, you did talk a little bit about your process and recon. And for those who didn't watch that, I highly encourage you to watch it. It was such an amazing video. I think I watched it like twice, just because I thought it was cool. Um, but one of the questions that I get in Bug Bounty is, okay, I did recon. A lot of people on YouTube, they show their recon process. Then there's that fine line, right? After recon, we don't really show the process of finding a bug on YouTube, and that's primarily because of information disclosure kind of thing. We don't want to disclose information about a company, but then the other side of that is we don't want a viewer to just run and report our bug. So,
Mhm.
so
Right.
there's two sides of that, right? Um, but at an overview, it will be helpful for us bug hunters to know your process after recon. So once you've collected all this data, subdomains, technology stacks, everything that you've collected, what do you do? Do you sort it? How do you manage to sift through all of that?
Yeah. Yeah, so I like to think of like bug bounty data in two different aspects. So the one coming from like machine generated data. So like running tools like nuclei, things like that. You're getting either SSL data, vulnerability data, things like that. And then from there you have to parse that and aggregate it based on whatever type of scanning you're doing, but then also the manual type recon. So that's clicking all the buttons on the website, looking through all the API requests. So that's like basically the two main data sources, I guess. And both of them have different steps that you could take, I guess, as a foundation. The first being the automated one. So obviously running all of those scripts, collecting all that data. I'm actually working on a video right now on a methodology behind like mass vulnerability scanning and stuff like that. So I could actually give you guys some insight into that right now. So my like main process for the automated um, retrieval comes down to like four key points. First would be like determining your target. So that could either be a company or a specific technology. And from there, you scan certain things. So if I'm looking for a technology, say sites that are running jQuery, I'm obviously looking for any company or any entity that has that technology running on it. And from there, then I can process hosts. I can see who the targets belong to. So that's one way for technology-based recon. And then obviously company-based recon is looking at just their infrastructure and then seeing what technologies are running on that infrastructure. So basically by categorizing the data, you can you can narrow down your searches and therefore have more like accurate recon to start off with.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So do you use like an Excel document to drop your recon data in there? I've seen we'll put it like this. I have seen people. I have a very organized. I feel like I have OCD with organizing my recon. I've seen
yes,
people take their recon, put it inside an Excel document, and then they start. I overheard what you meant when you mentioned the manual testing. So one of the common things to do is start clicking around and loading up like your site map in Burp, for example.
right.
Um, and then they get their site map up in Burp, and they're like, "Cool, now I have all this data. I don't know what to do with this data. What do you generally do? How do you so let's say you want to focus on a company and this company has I don't know, let's say there were six subdomains that have like these dynamic endpoints and you're like, okay, I have six subdomains to go. I've loaded up, I have data in the sitemap.
Right.
What do you start doing? You just pick one specific directory and start working with that, or do you do some additional research first?
Yeah. So the main thing that you said, I think dynamic is the biggest thing that I look out for first. So I want like before I even do any type of look for like any type of bug, I just try to find endpoints or certain parts of the site that are actionable. So things that I can change, things that I can delete, things that I can create. This creates a vector that allows you to either attack other users or view other users' data, something like that. So initially, you want to look at things that can be like modified or that change. So something that is not in a persistent state.
And for those who are new to the bug bounty world, dynamic endpoint is for simplicity's sake, if you're looking at a website, you might see something like a search bar. You might see like a parameter, which would be, it could be anything. P equals X, right? So the P would be the key or the parameter, and then X would be the value for that parameter. And if you change X to Y and you get a different response, we call that dynamic. If you
Exactly.
change X to Y and it's the same response, we call that static. So when we say dynamic endpoint, we're talking about something that if we enter a different character, we should get a different response.
Wow.
And Burp Suite actually has a little gear icon, so it tells you.
This
Yeah.
is so cool. Like I finally understand like what we're talking about here because thanks to Pap, I've been working with him on some bug bounty stuff and he taught me all this stuff. So now I can finally follow along and understand what's happening. That's so
So,
cool. Sorry.
Exactly.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like I'm
So
involved right now. Keep going. Keep going.
yeah, no. So Gavin, one of the things that I hear is, okay, cool. I found a dynamic parameter, and I ran fuff against it in a word list, and then I ran, nuclei in the full URL path if the parameter was in the URL, and I got nothing. And then I just move on. So I know you mentioned you do some kind of manual testing. Do you do anything additional to just running fuzzing or vulnerability scans against a specific endpoint?
Yeah. So something I've kind of adopted more recently and I've never really thought about before, but once you start to do it, you kind of gain like an additional perspective on attack surface. Um, so basically, say if, like you said, you change the dynamic endpoint, whatever, you try all these things, you're still getting the same responses. What I try to do is I try to contextualize that resource or that specific endpoint. So say if this certain endpoint is on like an API, nothing's coming back from it. Um, well, look into maybe more of the API documentation. Are there certain endpoints that you haven't seen yet? Um, you could also look like just Googling the certain technologies. Sometimes developers will disable like the intro pages or stuff like that, and you can find like hidden resources basically on the documentation or like the development pages of that certain technology. For example, one of the more recent bugs was working on a GraphQL API, and um, the query was just to look into a public group, but then I wasn't finding anything wrong with the public API. So I started to think I contextualized the API and I realized that there's also private groups. So what if I try to use the same API request against a private group? And what happens? They don't have protections against the private group. I'm able to see into the private group, and that's how I was able to report that bug.
Absolutely, you hit on a few
Scan.
things there that I think is very important, and I don't want people to miss these points. He couldn't find anything with the public group, so it didn't mean he moved on. He decided to read documentation and try to figure out, is there anything more with this endpoint that I could look at? And thus he found a private group that he was able to, find bugs in, or one, or I don't know how many, but find some bugs in. And I think that's important, right? Because that's part of the manual process. If you just run your scan and you move on, you probably haven't contextualized that API. So, so
Exactly.
contextualizing and actually reading the documentation, understanding how it is a very important step for bug bounty, and it's also part of security research. So I love how in the beginning you mentioned you're a security researcher because that's exactly what a security researcher does. They research about technology. Um,
Gavin, I have a quick question. For
Yeah.
those who are new and have no idea what we're talking about, can you explain in the dumbest terms an API and a GraphQL API?
Yeah.
What are those?
Yes. So the funny thing is like I kind of am learning in reverse,
Mhm.
because I've kind of learned all of the vulnerability types and all of the like things like that first, and now I'm understanding like the technologies behind them.
Mhm.
So I'll try to give you my best definitions on based on what I know. But I'm pretty sure a API is an application programmable instance or
program
something like that.
interface. Yep,
Interface.
Interface.
application
Okay.
programming interface.
So yeah, so I don't even know the basic definitions, but
No, yeah, that's good.
basically what an API does is it routes like your traffic or some type of request through a server so that you can make changes into a database. So say for instance, I have a user's API. I can use a put request to put certain data into that user's database through the user's API. So basically, it's a proxy for data.
Yep, exactly.
Wow.
Um, have either of you heard of the GraphQL analogy?
No, I don't even know what GraphQL is.
Okay, so GraphQL is an API. So
Okay.
as Gavin explained, API it routes data back and forth between backend and what the user sees. Um, there are different types of API, right? There's like SOAP, RESTful. Then there's GraphQL, which was created by Facebook in 2007, I think. I forget what year, but the analogy goes, right? Imagine you have a vending machine, right? And the API is the mechanism that delivers soda from the machine to the user. So you want a Coke, you press the button, the API delivers that Coke from the backend to you. A RESTful would be every time you click a button, a soda comes out. So every time you want a soda, you have to click a button and a soda comes out. GraphQL would be you're able to click 5 buttons and 5 sodas come out at the same time. So that's the
Wow.
main difference between the two is GraphQL allows you to make one request and it gives you all the information based on the schema, whereas
Right.
RESTful is just one request per query that you have to send.
Yeah.
Dude, that's really
I
cool.
think the biggest thing with GraphQL obviously is the last two letters, like a query language kind of. So the biggest thing when looking into like targets that run this type of technology is looking for uh, like using like introspection or things like that, looking for their schemas and trying to use those queries basically to get data back that you aren't supposed to. Like they didn't have any access control over the like the game search queries because I was able to do both private and public. So it opens the query language aspect of it opens up access control issues even further than just a normal API.
That I'm
Absolutely,
sorry. That's
absolutely.
so cool that you. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I, no, no, absolutely. And for those who are a little confused as to what introspection is for GraphQL. It's a GraphQL specific term. It's just a way to view the schema of that specific GraphQL endpoint. So by schema, I mean like the breakdown, right? So how things work, what are the available options that you have, and things like that. So back to you, Grant. I knew you were going to say something.
I just wanted to keep going down the rabbit hole. Uh, Gavin, you said that you're kind of learning in reverse. Trying to gather my words here. Learning in reverse. So you just kind of started off, and as you're doing these things, you're learning what they are. So you,
Yeah, yeah. So most of my like interest previously was kind of just breaking down the systems. I didn't really understand how the systems were actually built up. Obviously, you learn a good bit of that when you're actually breaking down the systems because you see how they fail. You see how you can fix your queries to get a 200 response, something like that. But now that I'm like kind of shifting my bug bounty focus and everything towards development and like creation, like making new tools, things like that. I'm kind of now we're working in reverse, building up those technologies, and I'm seeing how when you are developing these things, how easy it is for so many vulnerabilities to be added just after one feature.
Mhm.
So now I'm kind of getting that rounded aspect on bug bounty as well as development
Man,
or
Yeah,
application security, I guess is a better word for it.
that's a really cool concept. I think for bug bounty hunting, for research, security research, either way you want to put it, there's multiple ways to learn something, and the way you've learned, right, the unique way of learning the vulnerability first and working backwards. That's a really cool way to learn something, and you found something that worked for you,
Right,
which as we can clearly see, it has been working really well. So
right.
it's really cool that you are, you have taken that approach. Um, and I feel like it might be a shortcut in some ways.
but then you can
Yeah,
also explain things in a way that somebody who just learned it traditionally, like you explain it in your own way that works for you. Like if I ask somebody who learned how what an API is from the book and then put it into practice, they'd explain it completely different because they learned it completely different. Whereas you're working backwards, you were like, this is how I
exactly.
understand it, and this is how it works. So
Exactly. Yeah.
So cool.
I think I think thought processes are one of like the biggest things for any type of hobby or job. You kind of have to have, well, you don't have to, but at least for me it works is to have like a system or like a methodology behind what you're doing so that even if anything goes wrong, you still stick to it, and you'll still have some type of outcome.
Mhm. Yeah. So I know you're well established now, and you read these terms and documentation, and I'm sure you understand what's happening now, especially if you're looking at a GraphQL document. Um, how did you get to that point? I'm sure at one point you asked yourself, what kind of technology is this? And then you went into the documentation. You're like, I don't understand what's happening here. What did you do? How did you get to the point where you're now able to understand a lot of these technologies?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing with this is kind of trial and error, but not only trial and error as just you try this thing and it doesn't work, but thinking about why it doesn't work and understanding the relationships between different mechanisms or different like types of data. Applications aren't just like a linear like you do this and this comes back. Some things might happen on different pages that you're unaware of. Some things in the database might get updated or deleted that you're unaware of. So there's multiple streams of data and different workflows that happen from just one thing. So you have to really have to understand, contextualize, and understand those relationships.
Absolutely, absolutely. Have you ever had a time where um, you're trying to understand, maybe you have understood, you contextualize, you keep probing at this endpoint, and you just a week goes by, you're like, there's nothing. I found nothing here. What do you do? How do you overcome that discouragement, right? Because I think a lot of people get discouraged when they can't find a bug for a certain amount of time. How do you
Yeah.
overcome that I guess discouragement, but also what do you do? Do you move on, or do you just decide to stick it out?
Yeah. So I'd say it depends on kind of what level I am into it. If I'm just probing around to see if I want to select a certain target, and if I'm digging into one, I sign up and I see that, I'm looking at their API requests. I can see they have everything pretty hardened. I try certain things, and I just recognize that, with my current knowledge and my current skills, I'm not able to find vulnerabilities in this certain point. So I either move on or I'll look at something else with that scope. But there's some certain times where you kind of have to humble yourself, and if something's extremely hardened, I'm not an expert. I just do it. I do it on the side. I learn my best, but there's some things that you just can't get over, but nothing's ever 100% secure, like everyone says. So there's definitely some way you can break it.
Man. Yeah, absolutely. I have so many people who they want, and I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure many people have seen it. They're in bug bounty. They've studied a lot. They try a lot of probing, but um, at the end of the day, I get the response. Bug bounty is just dried up now. There's no vulnerabilities left. Um, what they're really saying is all the vulnerabilities that I've learned on the surface level doesn't exist anymore, but
Exactly.
there's always going to be a vulnerability there.
Right.
I think that's the important thing, especially as Gavin mentioned about doing the research, trying to understand technology. And I love how you worded it just means I'm not smart enough yet, right? Because you might learn some things that on another bounty that
Mhm.
nobody knows and come back and you're like, hey, this worked here too. Oh, look, this worked there.
Exactly.
Things like that. Um, okay, so I want to know about the big question that people usually get frustrated with since we're talking about when things don't go wrong. You found the bug, you report the bug, and the platform, although you know it's a bug, the platform either says, no, this is not a valid bug, or duplicate. And in some cases, I've actually lost points for duplicates in Hackerone, for example. Um, have you experienced what I call reporting hell? And what do you do? How do how do you handle that? It can be very discouraging.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's probably my biggest knock about bug bounty is the report hell. Basically, if you could boil it down to three, obviously three issues. Either the issue is yourself, the reporter, the mediator, whether that be HackerOne, BugCrowd, or the actual company, whoever's hosted on that platform. And most of the times, um, all three of those things come into play. Not every report, but as the reports go on, you open up the gap for that. So I'd say for handling the first thing is the user thing. So the biggest thing you want to do when you're writing those reports or whatever is you want to be, I know it says it there as well, but as detailed as possible. The triagers are human. The companies are human. They need to know more information. Don't just copy and paste the nuclei output into the thing and expect you to get a $10,000 bounty. It may happen, but it's probably not likely. So that's for users. And obviously, make sure that the vulnerabilities are accurate. Um, uh, when I was first starting out, I would sometimes report things to companies and it wouldn't even be related to their asset. I was reporting out a different asset. So always make sure that your reports are 100% accurate from a user side. Then to the second thing being the mediator. I know there's been a lot of controversial talk about these platforms, particularly being HackerOne is the main one I use. Things like response time, as well as the mediation when reports don't go the way that you want them to. And in the end of the day, uh, as good as it might seem, these companies are still companies. They're still businesses. Um, at the end of the day, they have to meet those quotas, or they have to have those relationships with those companies. Um, and that's just the sad truth about this particular thing in bug bounty, but also in the reality of world. That's just how it is. So I think you have to use your best effort to try to communicate and be as helpful as you can with those mediators. But as I've experienced myself, sometimes it doesn't go the way you want. And right now, I'm even in some mediations where I haven't heard back from HackerOne yet. So you just kind of have to be patient and set yourself up in a way to the best that you can um, to be secure when things go wrong. So that's for two. And then the last one being the company. Um, from their aspect, you have to think about what does that report not mean only to you, you might hold a lot of value in that report because you work so long on it. But in the aspect of the company, is a little clickjacking vulnerability going to affect a multi-trillion-dollar company like maybe you think it will? Probably not. You have to think of these bugs from a company's perspective, um, vulnerability wise or even asset wise. Is that certain function, is that a critical to their business? Is that critical to them losing or making money? So you just have to, I guess, again, contextualize your report and kind of get a better mindset going into it because it's if you don't, it's a hard road.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember my first 10 reports were, I had heard I think it was like Jay Haddix or someone who like they're on their YouTube video where they're just like be super detailed. So like my first 10 reports, I Googled so the first report I wasn't the first. One of the first reports I made was information disclosure on like SharePoint. They had this like VTI endpoint where you can sometimes get like verbose error messaging and then from there information disclosure. So I Googled VTI Hackerone and I saw like old reports from like 2005, 2004 and I just copied that report and repasted it for the new endpoint. So another thing is make sure it's what you just said, Gavin. Make sure the
Right.
context and you know what you're talking about. So, sending those reports and I remember getting the response back like how does that affect this endpoint? Like it's this endpoint's not critical to us, so we don't really care. So although the
Right.
report itself might have been valid, it wasn't that vulnerability. Like information disclosure is only important if the information is valuable to that company, not if
Exactly.
it says admin not found, for example. So things like
Exactly.
that.
I'd like to kind of to double down on this. When I first started going into to learning about this subject, I was listening to that Darknet Diaries episode with Doggy G. And from there, I learned about Nahamsec. And then from there, I did a bunch of research on what bug bounty is and how it works. And during my research, a lot of people were saying, oh, bug bounty has now become oversaturated. You have people who are just like making their own vulnerability scanners and running it and getting bounties or buying them and running them. What is your opinion? Do you think it's becoming oversaturated or becoming kind of cheaty, if that's a word?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say I'd say that the kind of gray area is still there around bug bounty hunting. Not in the sense that it's like a sketchy thing to do, but just that no single person has control over the state of the report other than the company or the mediator. So just always keep that in mind. But for the oversaturation part, I think that I think that we kind of have a skewed perspective, not in the sense that there's too many hunters, but that there's different types of hunters. Obviously, there's full-time hunters, there's part-time hunters, there's people who just do it whenever they want. Um, but another factor to consider is how much these payouts mean to people. Obviously, a $500 report in America is going to be different to someone in a different country. The monetary value changes, and based on people's cost of living, it can change how you operate like that. So one bug could mean the world to someone, and one bug could just be a utility pay to another. So I don't think it's oversaturated in the sense that there's too many hunters, but I think that like the perspective or the people who are saying that have like a wrong perspective and should consider how many factors there are really.
Mhm. That's a good point. Yeah, never thought of it like that.
Right. You hear like the early bird gets a worm, but no one really talks about the rabbit and the hare and the turtle race anymore, right? Like the
Yeah,
turtle wins that race. It was
second mouse
nice and
gets the
slow.
chief. Second mouse gets-
Um, yeah, and and unfortunately there are the there are pay to win tools. I've used a few, I've demoed a few, I
Oh,
would say. I haven't used them in Book Bonnie, but
oh.
I've demoed a few pay to win tools that like bypass WAF and would just like pop XSS, for example, and like has this and like is constantly collecting payloads from Twitter. So whenever Twitter payloads pops up, it goes into this tool. So like I've seen private tools like that, and then they try to sell it off to people pay to win. But at the same time, the people who post these payloads on Twitter, they had to have discovered it themselves.
Mhm.
So that's what I mean by the turtle race, right? Like if you're taking the time and you're learning how cross-site scripting works, you can discover your own payload that no tool has. And thus you've not only gotten your bounty, but you've gotten more experience under your belt.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, you want to say something, Gavin?
No, I was just gonna say like what you were saying, like crafting those own payloads, all that stuff. You can look into like how that like the RFC documents, stuff like that, how that data is supposed to be transported. And even just from that base, like foundational level, just from that, you could start to break how those things are supposed to be transported.
Have you
Yeah,
seen those like
absolutely.
job postings where it's like, if you want this job, you need to have found some kind of bounty in some kind of bug bounty program? Have you ever seen those?
No, I
No.
haven't.
Dude,
That's
I saw that
interesting.
like once, like I was just searching on LinkedIn and one of them was like, if you want this, it was like one of the requirements was you've had to have found a bug in some kind of bug bounty program. It's wild. It's like, whoa, that's cool.
That's awesome.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, it gives the hunters a chance to actually get a job.
Yeah.
Like not many jobs except bug hunting. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of hunting, bonus question. So I thought it'd be really cool to ask you about one of the most complex bounties that you've discovered. You don't necessarily have to mention the company. I don't want to throw any companies under the bus, but I'm curious to know what is one of the complex bugs that you discovered, and how did you even find this bug in the first place?
Yeah. So this bug unfortunately wasn't paid out. And that's kind of what makes it complex, which I'll get into now. So, like you guys mentioned, Nahamsek, me and him we were hunting one day, and I was going through the JavaScript on Bug Bounty and had one of the JavaScript scanners that points out the dependencies. And from here, we noticed that the npm repository wasn't registered. So we registered it and we put in an initial payload, which wasn't completely detailed. This was my first time kind of working with a dependency confusion RCE. So I was kind of new to this, so I didn't know what type of payload to build. I was really excited. So I kind of just put in a basic proof of concept payload to see if it actually works. So then we get to uploading this uh, registry or repository, whatever, and the payload starts to get fired, but not only from the company's asset that we were targeting. There was a bunch of different like checkers and everything calling back to our host. But one thing that I forgot to include in the payload was a way for the hosts that are calling back to identify themselves to us. So uh, both Nahamsek and I were unable to identify what traffic was coming from where. So we weren't able to conclude and submit our report to the company because we didn't know what their traffic was. Um, and then eventually the NPM automatically deletes like malicious repositories. So then our RC faded away like that.
Man, that must have been tough to deal with. Really quickly, for those who don't know, RCE, it's remote code execution. So it's a way for you to send commands to a remote server, pretty much, and have that server execute those commands. Um, so, I mean, man, you send this payload to the server, it fires back, and and it doesn't tell you who it is. So I'm sure the report was something like this could have been anyone. And yeah, so what did you do there? Did you continue out of frustration? Did you continue like testing NPM? Did you just give up and say, I'm coming back later? Man, that's a heavy pill to swallow there.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the time we were working on a specialized target. So the I was kind of limited on how much I could talk to the company and things like that. So I kind of just learned my lessons there. And now that the registry was kind of catching on to our malicious repositories, I didn't want to push it any further, and I already knew that we kind of lost the bug there. So I just took that one as a learning lesson, and now I know to make sure that any payload I send anywhere has some type of identifier.
Can you
There you have it,
explain what an
folks.
NPM is for those who don't know and
Oh,
myself?
it's Node Package Manager for like Node.js.
Okay. Okay.
Is it Node.js? It's Node Package Manager for like I think it's Node.js.
Yeah. So basically the as best as I know it, those any applications or whatever that require certain functionality depend on the dependencies which have that functionality. And if they're not publicly registered, sometimes you can register your own repository under that, and then scripts will automatically use your repository, and you can put malicious code in them, and then the scripts will run it.
And I love how Gavin explains it from the
Yeah.
backwards side up,
Backwards
which is
way.
really cool. You explain it from the vulnerability to the actual what it is. That's just pretty
Right.
cool. I need to start learning things
Sec.
backwards.
Do you and the
uh,
Homsec hunt a lot? Are you guys like, you know, type
Yeah.
type bros,
Yeah. So he was definitely someone I would consider my mentor starting out. He kind of gave me encouragement, and I kind of always looked up to him uh as like my number one bug bounty hunter. And then over the years, so things like DEF CON or just like different things online, we've collaborated sometimes as well as met up in person, and I just talked to him just like anyone else, and he's a great man. So
Mhm.
yeah, we've definitely talked, and he's given me some encouragement and words of advice. So we
Nice.
we hunt sometimes, but not as frequently as I wish.
yeah.
I wish we
I'm,
could.
I'm sure most of you know who Nahamsek is, but if you don't, just type in YouTube Nahamsek, watch his videos. He is I don't think I don't I have not met him personally, but he is someone that does make me smile. There are several people on my smile list, I call it. He is one of them. So Nahamsek is known not only known for being a good bug hunter himself, but he's known for having the heart to want to spread the information
Mhm.
that he's learned. And he has just a plethora of videos. Honestly, I don't think he gets enough credit. I mean, he needs
No.
more subscribers. He needs a lot of things, but
Streams on
he has
Twitch
just a
too, right?
plethora of videos where he just explains like his process, the tools that he uses. Whenever a new tool comes out, he'll like make a video and say, a new tool just dropped. Look at what it does and click through it and show you how it works. That level of like dedication to helping other people needs like more recognition.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Yeah, I try to watch his videos, but I mean, at the time when I was first starting off, they went right over my head. I was like, I don't know what's going on. So,
Yeah. I actually I didn't it's funny. I didn't know who he was until I was scrolling on Twitter one day and I saw at the top of my feed there was a post that said why I stopped doing recon. I was like, who's this guy that stopped doing recon? I click on a video and he's like, recon is boring. It takes a while. I'm like,
it's
who is this
boring.
guy? And so yeah, and so I click on the video and the title it was a little misleading. He wasn't saying that recon was bad. He was just saying that like he's gotten to a point where he doesn't really need to focus that much on recon. He kind of just looks at what he knows what he wants to look at, and he kind of just dives in.
So we've
But yeah, he's a great guy. We'll probably link him in the description too for those who wants to get started and need like a good resource, a YouTuber
absolutely.
to go through some videos. Um, okay, so I know we're actually, yeah, we are coming up on time here. We love to ask this question, Gavin.
Yeah.
If as a well now college student, security researcher, bug bounty person, is there any parting advice you would like to leave for the bug bounty community, especially those who are beginners trying to get into the space and are having a really hard time?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest thing now that I'm kind of understanding is to just get the foundations understood. So either understanding those certain technologies, understanding how the technologies work, it will make learning the more advanced topics way faster because you understand the underlying aspects of it. Like I said, I work backwards, so I learned them slower, but definitely figure out your own way of learning, but make sure you understand the basics of whatever you're trying to do.
Nice. I had two
Abs-
closing questions, if that's
Yeah,
cool.
of
yeah, absolutely.
course.
So we've learned about your past, we've learned about your present. What's the future of Gavin? What's the future of Atomiczsec? After college, what do you
Yeah.
want to do? Do you want a job? Do you want to just freelance bug bounty? What's next?
Yeah.
Come back
Yeah.
for
So,
NPM.
oh yeah, I'm getting one of those RCs. Uh, that's number one on my list.
That's number one.
Um, but I would definitely say I'll be like in the job market looking for some type of cybersecurity related job. And I'm not really too particular because any aspect of cybersecurity interests me 100%. I'm in love with all of it. So really looking forward to getting into a more solid career
Mhm.
and following through with that. But also working on my side projects. Some aren't public yet, but working on side projects, working on those hobbies. Um, and yeah, kind of just doubling down. So getting it through my work life, but also my hobby side.
Mhm. Nice. So one thing that's been eating me alive recently is certifications. Pap knows about this. What is it you do you take any certifications? How important was networking and stuff to your hobbies and lifestyle of cybersecurity? How important is it for you?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say certifications are kind of a good reinforcer. So obviously as you're networking with people, you can say that you have this experience, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And not to say that a certification just shows that you like are an expert in that, but it just shows you that you've put in some time, you've studied, you've taken an exam. It shows that you at least have the dedication to become prepared for that test. So it's kind of just another thing to add to your credibility, but I think that the main thing that you should be applying with is yourself and not your credentials.
Correct. Facts. Man, dude. Man, what do you have anything else to say, Pap? I think I've
No, I think he hit it on the nose there, right? Like I think one of these episodes in season one, I mentioned that I interview people and I go off of the person, like the vibe
Mhm.
of the person, right? So if someone comes into an interview with me and they say, uh, yeah, I have my OSCP. Okay, well, I'm going to ask you OSCP questions and let's see if you know how to answer them. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I think you kind of just you made a solid point where yeah, certifications are great to have, but bring yourself,
Yeah.
and that's what really is important. You can mention you have the certifications, but most of the time we at companies we want to okay, it's great you have the certification. We are actually looking for someone who's dedicated enough to go and get one. But don't let that identify you. Don't
Yeah.
say,
Don't
Right.
let that your whole
Exactly.
personality.
I am a security plus holder. Sure. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Right.
But that is the episode four, right? Episode four, season two.
Yep.
Uh, we appreciate you for just giving us your time, Gavin. For those who uh, you know, want to know more about this uh or want to know more about bug bounty hunting, want to know more about Gavin, I'm going to once again defer to the David Bombal video. Gavin does a great job talking about a lot of things, a lot of different topics, including his recon process. So
Mhm.
today you heard the process in between recon and down to his mindset on finding these bugs. But in the David Bombal video, you hear a lot more around that process there.
Yeah.
Um, Absolutely. If you love this video, make sure you comment below. Make sure you ask questions. Um, if you're new, make sure you subscribe. Uh, what else? Make sure you like the video. Make sure you share the video.
Shout out to all of
All
our
the above,
guests.
all the shout out.
Shout out to
Um,
Gavin.
yep.
Go to his YouTube.
We will link all
David
of that.
Bombal. Check
Yep.
out
We will link
Atomiczsec.
all of that. Again,
Yeah,
thank
thank
you
you.
guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.